caffeinated in the face and chest George Terran. Not really running on that anymore, more pure rage towards general society. But I am joined by the man, the myth, the rebel in space, Mr. Travis Croft. How are you, sir?
I'm fine and dandy. I'm also fueled by rage, but mine's secondhand. So if you're one of those people who mistreats retail workers for a TikTok or something like that, you can fuck right off.
Yes,
at least the TikTok would be a reason, though, I suppose.
That's true. That's true. I'm doing this for the lols. But we've got a show for you today, ladies and gentlemen. So following on from last week's blowout, the classic Brian De Palma, John Travolta movie, I had the reins and I took us to John Woo's first Hollywood movie, the average to poor received Broken Arrow starring John Travolta and Christian Slater. We have got some Travis has watched George Michael Uncut, so I think it's impressive that he's had the circumcision
post-mortem.
That's impressive. He checked out The Unbearable Weight of Immeasurable Talent. Zach and Miri make a porno. I have divulged and just chewed down hard on Umbrella Academy Season 3, as well as caught up on all the latest from The Boys, and a new Netflix animated show called Spriggan. Didn't get a chance to see Men, which I'm very, very annoyed about for myself. But, when life throws shit in your face, sometimes you need to stop and regroup for a moment. So that's what I did.
It certainly beats burning the building down.
Yes, it's true. I would much rather burn the people and watch them run and scatter.
Okay, no los dos.
Should we not say those sorts of things on live TV?
Only if you're intending to do it.
It's true. I'm purely accidentally saying these things. I don't know what I'm saying. Well, I'm moving on. So, chain movie of the week, ladies and gentlemen. Let's talk about chain movie of the week, shall we?
Let's do that. So, 1996's Broken Arrow.
Yes. Now, had you seen this movie before?
I did. I think I saw this back in the 90s. And I think I mentioned last week it was part of a movie marathon, I think.
Yes.
When I don't even do them anymore. I would like to take issue with something you said earlier, though. This is not John Woo's first Hollywood movie. His first Hollywood movie, I would argue, is Hard Target.
Oh.
Made 3 years earlier. With, if I'm not mistaken, that's Jean-Claude Van Damme. No, you can have an argument about whether that's a Hollywood film or not, but I think it's a Van Damme film. I think it's classed as
it's
first Western film.
Yeah. We'll do it that way. We'll do it.
I haven't seen this. So it's probably been 25 years minimum since I saw this, since it came out. I think when I saw it came out, and it's an interesting little time capsule. It's a very 90s action film. It's very much certainly early on in John Travolta's career resurrection or renaissance, shall we say, which came about after Pulp Fiction. He was doing Look Who's Talking movies, and after this he's doing big action movies. But if you look at what he chose, he didn't choose very well, apart from, I think, Face Off. But I also was interested to see Frank Whaley pop up in this film. But we'll get to him in a second. So a bit of synopsis here for those who are too young to assume it, I guess. Terrorists steal nuclear warheads from the U.S. military but don't count on a pilot and park ranger spoiling their plans. So John Travolta and Christian Slater are Air Force pilot type people, Vic Deakins and Riley Hale, respectively. Samantha Mathis plays Terry Carmichael, the feisty, some might say plucky park ranger. Delroy Lindo, who's a familiar face, plays Colonel Max Wilkins. Howie Long is one of the goons. Vondi Curtis Hall, who we've talked about in the past on the show, plays Colonel Sam Rhodes, a different Sam Rhodes.
We've got Bob Gunton in there.
Jack Thompson's in here, the Australian legend of acting. As I sort of mentioned, Frank Whaley is in here in a reasonably prominent role as Giles Prentice, who is some sort of military expert or something.
Yeah.
But he liaison. You would know Frank Whaley for one reason and one reason only, and that would be, what ain't no country I ever heard of? They speak English, you what? He, of course, played Brett in in Pulp Fiction.
Of
The
course.
guy who gets shot by Samuel Jackson and John Travolta in the
Mhm.
big Kahuna Burger scene.
Yep.
And it's kind of a role you could almost imagine Robert Downey Jr. or John Cusack playing at the time.
Yeah.
Because it's a fairly prominent sort of role. He's in it
Yeah.
quite a bit for a guy who is literally remembered, I think, for one scene in one film his whole career. I think I couldn't. Like, if you'd asked me who Frank Whaley was a week ago, I don't think I could have named him.
Yeah.
But every time I look at him, he's Brett. So the curse of being in an incredibly successful film. But he does reasonably well. But he does look kind of got the feathery hair of a young Robert Downey Jr. And maybe I just couldn't afford Robert Downey Jr. The film is directed, as you mentioned, by John Woo. Written by Graham Yost, who probably only other thing you're going to know him for, did a little film called Speed.
Oh, that little one. Yep.
A couple of years before this, so I can imagine that's probably why this film got made.
Yeah, probably. But let's talk about the film in general, because you said that this is a little bit of a time capsule movie, and it kind of is. But interestingly, it feels somewhat like, do you remember through the 90s, we had a lot of Jerry Bruckheimer produced action movies you think of The Rock, you think of
Armageddon, Con Air.
Yeah, all of those kinds of ones. This feels like it was like the prototype for that. Even just the opening sequence of the music coming in, that little kind of bells kind of thing, ding 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 ding, 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 and then the top down of the boxing ring with the all black around it. It's really trying to be quite stylized and unique.
It's kind of a transition from I'm thinking of the early 90s Stallone films like Assassins or Demolition Man, which is a good film still. They kind of direct what he usually did, through to the more stylized Michael Bay films, which were kind of coming of age at this point in time.
Yeah, just on the cusp right there. So it is really interesting point in time to just look at it and go, oh, okay, well it's different to what we would have seen if you think about it in the timeline of movies when it released. It was like, okay, it was trying to be a little different, and it was trying to push some different buttons, like particularly the character of Deakins that John Travolta delivers, that kind of drawl that he's got going on, and that self-assured cockiness, but he's not muscled out or anything. We see him being a very proficient pugilist of his fists, and they do take a lot of pains very early on to try and earn something of a sympathy and camaraderie with the character of Deakins before the so over the top turn.
The unexpected yet inevitable betrayal.
Yeah, it is just that the kind of longing look over, and then there's like the close up of the face, and just the musical note, and then the reflection of the gun coming up. Is like everyone sees it coming, and it's like, okay,
it's a bit of a John Woo trademark, a reflection.
Oh yeah.
I think the difference, and I don't know, I'm not a film historian, but it might have been the introduction of Hong Kong cinema to Hollywood, which I think came with people like Quentin Tarantino. I'm not talking out of school here. I think everybody knows the man's a huge fan of the Shaw Brothers and Hong Kong action films. He would be a huge fan of John Woo, I would imagine.
Yeah.
And this is actually John Woo. But I think that's what kind of started to infiltrate Hollywood with films like this a little later with The Matrix, and with Face Off a couple of years after this. But that kind of style of highly stylized action, but almost ballet-like action that John Woo is famous for, which you don't see a lot of in this film. Actually, a bit rare, but there are sparks of that John Woo magic.
Yeah, like this is this has got a lot of his typical tropes of the slow motion ballet action sequences of people rolling out of the way of bullets and things like that, and that went to extreme levels in I think it was John Woo who directed Mission Impossible 2.
He did. Oh god, that was a terrible film.
It was not a good movie, and it's like, why are there so many fucking doves everywhere? It's the same as at the end of Face Off. They're fucking just get away. They're rodents in the sky.
Overall, though, I mean, you're right. Stylistically, it's interesting from a historical perspective. If you're alive in the 90s and you kind of remember when this happened.
Mm-hmm.
But overall, this is quite a bad film. In the sense it's badly written. I don't know it's badly directed. I think John Woo's a solid director and the action's done reasonably well. The action's good. The fight scenes are explosions. But I think it's the writing that lets this film down. Like, so many things in this film sort of happen and you're like, why did that happen?
Yeah.
So, as you note, the just a bit of synopsis of the plot here. Deakins and Hale are flying a stealth bomber with nukes loaded on it for reasons, and John Travolta is planning to hijack the nukes, and doing so he's planning to kill Hale and land the plane and still let the nukes out, and that way. But it's a fight in the plane, as you noted, with the John Woo-esque reflection in the window, and there's a fight, and Hale is ejected from the plane by Deakins, which allows him to then steal the nukes his own way. He lands. His parachute lands in the desert. He is seen. His parachute is seen by Samantha Mathis's Terry Carmichael. When she finds him, a guy who she has seen bail out of a jet. How many types of jets have ejector seats? The only ones I know about are military. And he's wearing a military uniform, an Air Force uniform, one might say. And she points a gun at him and tries to arrest him. Why would she try and arrest him? Like, even if she didn't know he was in the military, why would you try and arrest someone for their parachute landing in a national park?
Yeah.
It just, that moment, like, pulls you straight out of the picture and goes, okay, that's just stupid. Why is this scene happening? I mean, it's happening because we want to see the cool little fight between the two of them in the next 2 minutes, which teaches us that Terry can handle herself. And they're kind of sassy, and they've got some sexual chemistry together. Like, I'm sorry, you needed to find a better way to do that. And then all the stuff that happens around the nuclear weapons is been written by somebody who, A, doesn't know anything about nuclear weapons, B, assumes that I know nothing about nuclear weapons. Which, I guess maybe that's true, and maybe I'm being picky, but like...
No one should look in your basement.
We said we never mentioned that. It's just like, they let the bomb off underground, and there's an EMP that like fries everything and like blows a helicopter up essentially. And he's like, "Oh, turn your stuff off," and I'm like, "No, that's not how an EMP works." It's also the fact it happened underground. No, don't think an EMP happens if you look at. He set a nuke off on the ground. Certainly wouldn't. Anyway, like and
they made a lot of a big deal of the fact that it was a copper mine, and so it's like, okay, if the copper mine can stop the nuclear fallout, isn't it going to disrupt the EMP? Oh wait, you're asking me to not think. Cool. Okay.
There's a big explosion at the front of the mine. So at one point, one of the stolen nukes is blown up underground. And there's a big fireball comes out the top of the mine, and he's like, "Oh, that's okay. It was underground. All the fallout's being contained." I'm like, "No, it was a big fireball that came out the front of that thing. It's not what I call."
That was just burning oxygen, Travis.
That's not what I call. And so maybe I'm being picky here. People think this is ridiculous, but I'm like, this is what I was thinking when I was watching it. I just feel like these sort of logical, conundrums that don't make any sense. If something doesn't make any sense in the film, and I think probably the scene with Terry and Carmichael and Hale, who are arresting him, is probably worse in some ways because, okay, what do the general public know about nukes? Not very much, but we would be pretty comfortable that someone who ejected and parachuted into a national park wouldn't be arrested for that. But the Nick stuff really annoyed me as well. It's just sort of really, I think it's what annoyed me about Mission Impossible 2 when he directed it. It's stupid action stuff. Like, it's something I would expect from a film from the 80s, not from a film from the 90s. And I feel like films needed to get smarter in the 90s.
Yeah.
It was worse in Mission Impossible 2 because after this we had The Matrix. And I feel like The Matrix really upped the IQ of action films.
Yeah.
And, like, you couldn't be stupid anymore, like shoot a car and have it explode because...
I managed to get just the right angle on the entrance to where the fuel goes into the car, not the actual fuel tank. No, I managed to get just... You don't know the science, Travis.
Like, they did it on Mythbusters. So this film suffers from a lot of those big, dumb action moment things that surely someone somewhere said, well, hang on a second, is that how a nuke works? And they go, fuck it, who cares? It's going to look cool.
Yeah.
And yeah, I guess it kind of, it looks cool, but like, I think, you know, it's interesting. Like, if you had the kind of, I don't know, charisma of a Predator, maybe I'd pass. Like, it's just fun, right? Like that famous scene where Arnold and Mr. Carl Weathers have the handshake, but you know,
you got to push too many pencils.
It's like, you're like, okay, I'm gonna probably forgive that because that's just awesome. But like, this film isn't awesome enough to be this dumb.
Yeah,
what I'm saying.
It's interesting because all of the characters are also very much in that dumb phase too. Like, we are consistently kind of being told how intelligent Deakins is, and yet he's sort of like, okay, I've worked out this perfectly meticulous plan with contingency plan after contingency plan after contingency plan of the most absurd random shit. And yet it's sort of like, oh, you know what? I'm not going to finish off Hale. I'm going to let him just, you know, he'll survive or he won't. He won't come after me. It's like, I thought you were smart. And it's like, oh, yeah, it's really convenient that when the hijackers have the bomb hijacked from them by our heroes, they go to the same fucking place. It's like, okay, that's convenient. That's very convenient. Oh yeah, they get caught underground, and the only way out is obviously through the water that we heard.
It goes up.
It goes up. And it
Big up, stupid.
Within 5 minutes of a walking location to where they were going to meet on the river. So convenient.
There's a lot of that contrivance in this film. Where a film like Speed probably had a fair bit of contrivance in it as well, but it was so entertaining, you just kind of suspended your disbelief. Or I guess they were so obscure you didn't worry about them. Like, you know, the part with the bus jumps over the gap, and that looks ridiculous when you think about it. But in the cinema, you're like, cool.
Yeah. That's the thing. Speed is designed as literally just one big chase, and everything happens. It's like, okay, I'm literally on this ride. Take me on it. That's fine. And Speed kind of loses it when they finally get off the bus, and it loses some of its momentum.
You always felt like that third act was tacked on because they're like,
exactly. It was just unnecessary. But this kind of feels like it's trying to be that, like a chase movie, but it's sort of like, all right, let's go through some terrain that is not convenient to drive fast through and make cool looking action sequences. It's not close, tight streets like London or even going onto the Rock, get down the iconic hills of San Francisco. This is just a flat fucking plains with just a bad road, a bad dirt road. And it's like, okay, no one would be driving full pelt with a nuclear bomb in the back of their fucking Jeep.
Well,
sorry.
Here's the thing. One of the really good lines in this film is, please stop shooting at the thermonuclear weapons.
Yes.
But that's not how thermonuclear weapons work. And we've already been told that in the film.
Yeah.
That you need to be armed, and they actually need to be blown up using their own mechanism. Like, you could sit them in a lake of burning gasoline for an hour, and they won't blow up. That's not how they work.
But the pistol.
You can shoot the thermonuclear weapons as much as you need to, really. I mean, it might make them a little harder to fire at some point, but they're not going to blow up. which is the indication in the film. So
Mm-hmm.
it's just that I wouldn't say I was bored. It just wasn't very good because again, the writing wasn't good enough to carry such a stupid story.
Yeah.
I guess a stupid story is a result of a writing. They just sort of undermine anything good that would have come about from the casting. What did you make of John Travolta as a bad guy?
I kind of like John Travolta as a bad guy generally, especially when he's smarmy. He's one of the actors that I put with Jude Law. I much prefer Jude Law and John Travolta when they're being fucking assholes or just chewing the scenery of bad guy, because they're just more fun to watch. This one is a weird one. He's like a trying to, up until the end, he's trying to be an honorable or at least a gentleman villain sort of thing. And he's like, oh yes, I'm a modern day fucking Moriarty of I've worked out every conceivable angle on this heist and it's going to work perfectly. And there's some interesting elements that he brings out in it. For example, like where he finally just kills Bob Gunton in the thing just by just grabbing a baton and just poof in his throat. And then he has that very short little monologue. It's like, I've never realized I've never actually killed anyone before. I mean, I've dropped bombs on Baghdad, but this is the first time I've actually done it myself. I don't know what the big deal is. Like, okay, that's kind of interesting. That takes us in more into his psyche beyond just those slow zoom in on his face as he goes, you know?
But there are also, I guess, where it was lacking for me a little bit. I mean, he pulled it off okay in the end. I'm like, John Travolta is a bad guy. I kind of like him as an anti-hero, but his plan makes no sense. His motivation's terrible. And he's just coming back and going to get back again to the bad writing. He's like, I want $250 million. And you're like, it's actually not very much, you know.
Yeah, especially when it was made a joke of in Austin Powers when Dr. Evil goes $200 million and everyone just laughs at him.
Yeah, like, and you're like, it's not much, like for a US government, right? That's kind of chump change.
Yeah.
But okay, and he's like, well, I'm gonna buy 5% of Volvo, and I'm like, okay. But everybody knows who you are, right? You've told them who you are. Like they figured out it's you. Like, I mean, how are you going to spend the money? Like, it's like the plan in The Rock made more sense if you remember. Like, Ed Harris was going to send that money to families or something like that, and it was all kind of COVID. He was planning to die anyway.
Yeah,
but like he's not planning to do. He's planning to get away.
Yeah,
with the money, but everybody knows it's you. Like, and like, hey, how are you going to get that out of the fucking country? You know, once you do ransom the nuke, and
he would have a dinghy.
Even if you did get out of the country, like, let me tell you, you'd be hunted for the rest of your life. I don't think you're buying 5% of Volvo anytime soon. But that was a nice little line. It probably sounded really cool on paper. Oh, I will buy Volvo and I will feel really good about making the safest cars in the world. And you're like, okay, it's clever. It sounds good. But no one's thought about this. And like, no one ever tells us why he's decided to become a traitor. And you know, he's 20 years. Is like, they're sort of hinted at it because he never got promoted enough. And you're like, thin, guys. It's thin.
So he's just a disgruntled worker. Everyone out there, watch it for all retailers. There's an army of us.
If only you could hijack a nuke.
Don't give me ideas on air.
It was again. It kind of undermined everything that he was doing because I didn't understand why he was doing it. It didn't make any sense to me. I thought Christian Slater was fine. He did what Christian Slater used to do. Samantha Mathis, a strange choice. Strangely unconvincing choice. I guess she does okay in the action sequences.
Terrible, but it was like, okay, I don't quite know what's.
I think this is a good demonstration, though. If you go back to Heat, Heat's amazing. Speed, like. Okay, the chemistry between Sandra Bullock and Keanu Reeves is fucking off the charts.
Yeah.
I mean, and Sandra Bullock wasn't a big star until after that film. She became a big star, I think, after that film. But I think you can see she's an incredibly charismatic actress. Even in, say, Demolition Man, which, again, she wasn't a big star at that point in time, even afterwards. But I don't know that Sanford Manford Mathis has the same kind of on-screen charisma or presence that Sandra Bullock brought to a role. And she and Christian Slater have nothing like the chemistry. Christian Slater is not Keanu Reeves.
No.
And hence they do not, two actors. And you don't need to be a great actor. We talked a few weeks ago about the crappy movie with Melissa Joan Hart in it. But she had great chemistry with Joey Lawrence. But these two just don't have it.
Yeah.
I don't buy it. And I don't buy her. And it's, and
every scene that they're in, the dialogue is written aimed exclusively to try and perpetuate that kind of connection and bond through adversity to it. And it's like, I just don't believe it. Like, it's, so I think you're supposed to kind of feel like, oh, it's the burgeoning romance after they've washed it out into the river and he's comforting her, saying about the butterflies and things. It's like, oh, that's really lame. And even the characters kind of address, and you can see them register that it's a bit of a shitty line, but there's not enough charisma from either of them or balls to kind of play it a bit more as a comedy element. And like, really, that's the fucking line you're using to hug me? It just doesn't add up to what they're hoping for every single time.
It's kind of a cut price speed in a way, but not I guess maybe without the Die Hardy elements. I hated them. I know we sort of promised a return to kind of average run-of-the-mill films, and we've delivered.
We did it.
It's average is probably the best I could say. It's not horrible. It's very much certainly not great. It's of its time. It's got an interesting cast of sort of, apart from Travolta, really kind of character acters.
Yeah.
Christian Slater was a movie star at the time. I'm being a bit He was a movie star at the time. He is no more. I think if you want to see a good John Woo Western Hollywood movie, I think your only choice is Face Off.
Honestly, he wasn't able to really bring what he was famous for in Hong Kong cinema to the West. It just never worked, or for whatever reason, it just didn't kind of come together in his, as he really tried, which is a shame.
Yeah, I mean, it's fair enough. I mean, a lot of, in a way that, say, Ang Lee was able to sort of adapt more to, adapt maybe not the right word, but he certainly found success in the West in a way that maybe John Woo didn't. I kind of think he might be a bit of a one-trick pony, John Woo. And I'm going to get torn down for that. But I guess if you like what he does, then you're probably good at it. As I said, I mentioned, I saw some of his Hong Kong stuff when I was in university, and I just found it kind of repulsively violent. Not in a good way, not in a good way. So I should probably put my hand up and say I'm not a massive fan of John Woo, and that's probably due to the fact that the stuff I was exposed to wasn't probably his best work.
Yeah. All right, now you have the keys.
I have the keys, and
interestingly, where are we
going? I'm going to take us somewhere very, very, very different.
Okay.
This maybe a film that John Woo and the writers and the producers of this film could have learned from. They could have taken some of the elements of dread and fear and repulsion from this film and put that into a film like that. And it might have elevated it beyond the kind of summer dreck it was. We're going to follow Australian acting icon, Jack Thompson.
Okay.
Who played an American general in this, and I always think it's hilarious to see him doing an American accent because they sound terrible.
Okay, what are we
have very, very lot to pick from. We're going back to 1971 and the Australian drama thriller classic, Wake in Fright.
Oh, okay.
So this is directed by Ted Kotcheff, who he may not be a household name, but was a well-respected North American director. Amongst other things, he directed an interesting yin and yang of films. He directed First Blood, Rambo, And he also directed Weekend at Bernie's. So, no. There's 2 films but it also stars Donald Pleasance, who, of course, probably best known for, what was it? He's in some of those war films, if I'm not mistaken. Was it the Dirty Dozen or the Great Escape or something like that?
Great Escape, yeah.
He was in a Bond film or 2, if I'm not mistaken. It's
He
Blofeld.
was. He played Blofeld.
And, of course, he was in Halloween. The first one, anyway. So, also in here, if you probably won't be familiar with him, but Chips Rafferty. Chips Rafferty was an Australian acting legend of an earlier age.
I know the name. I don't know where from, though.
What was he? And he was in Mutiny on the Bounty.
That would be it.
So he did a little bit of work in Hollywood. Now, I'm making it a little bit hard for you to get out of this one, but I think some of those, Donald Pleasance, Ted Kotcheff, or somebody like that will be able to get out of it. And they did do a remake of this a few years ago.
I'm sorry, but there is only one way that we are going to be going. We are going to follow the other Australian icon, John Million, and we are going to go to fucking Crocodile Dundee.
Well, Crocodile Dundee 2 or something, probably.
No, we'll go, if he's in it, Crocodile Dundee in Las Vegas.
Did they do that, did they? I know it was at LA.
They did. I think, I can't remember if it was LA or Las Vegas, but I don't know.
I'm pretty sure they were trying to get the Las Vegas one. I know the LA one did happen, and I've never seen it. The first 2 were okay. Were good. They're but in case you're curious, there was a remake in 2017. If you think I've seen this before, it is available to rent on Apple TV, the YouTubes, Google Plays, and a thing called Ozflix, which if you're one of our overseas listeners, you're probably not going to have access to, I'm guessing. But just in case you'd like to follow along.
Okay.
This is an iconic Australian film. So I think when people like Quentin Tarantino talk about Ozploitation, this is one of those ones that he's mentioning.
Okay. Cool. Now,
do you want to talk to us about the boys?
Yeah. So we've had since we last talked about it, there have been 2 new episodes come out for the boys, and the most recent one is one that has been spreading a lot because they gave a lot of advance warning that this was going to be offensive. It was an episode called Herogasm. And how up to date are you?
I am not up to date.
You're not up to date. How much have you seen? How much do you know about Soulja Boy?
Just what was in the there was the preview, sort of those vignettes of him.
Oh, okay. Yes. All right. In that case, I will not spoil anything on that because we are only episode 6 and we've got 2 more episodes.
I think I'm halfway through episode 4.
Oh, okay. Yep. Yeah. So Herogasm is very much the creators of the boys doing what they do best and just bringing fucking everything. Every single emotion is on the table. They are going so far off the reservation of anything that you would expect from any other superhero out there in the fucking world, and it is a joy to fucking behold. It is funny, it is disgusting, it is vulgar, it is brilliant, it is intelligently written, it is emotionally investing. This is premium quality stuff that is not suitable for everyone. So if you don't, that you will get a very quick idea of if you like this through some of the little vignettes and things that are online. And these guys are unafraid of going smashing Kool-Aid Man style through those barriers and go, oh yeah, and keeping on going whilst shoving a dildo up someone else's ass as they run past them in the shower. They are unabashed in their appreciation for what they're doing. I'm really impressed with Prime Video. Just going, nope, we know what you want to deliver. You have your audience. Go for it. And This is just absolutely brilliant. Jensen Ackles, he is the newest cast member to The Boys. He plays Soldier Boy. And for most people, you think of Justin Ackles and you think of his time, 15 seasons of Supernatural, and him being Dean Winchester. And he was great in that. And he, over the course of 15 years, he got a chance to really evolve the character and go ridiculous. They fucking had a Scooby-Doo animated episode in Supernatural. They've had him run through the ringer of emotional stuff. Soldier Boy is an entirely different character, and he is presenting himself in an entirely different way to what you have seen. The shit that Soldier Boy says is brilliant because it is so on point to stuff that people are saying now, that it's funny and you just kind of go, ooh.
It's actually been, I know it's been written quite extensively about, but it's become more obvious this season than ever before that Homelander is Trump.
Oh yeah.
Like, I mean, there was a whole scene in, I think, episode 2 or 3 where Supersonic, or what his name, joins the team, and he brings him the taco bowls. Oh, we have the best taco bowls in the building. I'm like, that's a direct rip of something Trump actually tweeted.
And the way that Homelander is responding to everything that goes on around him, it's they're not hiding that simile or that parody.
I feel they were a little more subtle about it in the last previous seasons. Like, you know, they weren't quite as in your face about it. But I mean, they're not even trying to hide it anymore. Yeah.
But now it's this show has always had that. There are no good people. Everyone's gray. Everyone's twisted by power in one way or another, whether it's the politicians, whether it's the supers themselves, whether it's the boys who are supposed to be the counterweight to the supers and things like that. They are going even grayer with all of this. And so I cannot wait to see how the last 2 episodes go, because at the end of Herogasm, we get a little sneak peek fight between a number of the characters, and it's like, oh, this is just teasing me for what's coming next. They've clearly got something special planned for the last 2 episodes, and it's going to be, I know that they're going to deliver on it because they're fucking delivering every goddamn episode. I don't know what they're going to do, but that's part of the joy of it, and especially the allure and the magnetism of a character like Homelander, who every single time we have seen him go through the ringer, all of the stuff with Stormfront, everything with the Sun, and the way that he has responded to every conceivable, in his mind, attack on him, he has always taken the darker route, and now it's like, oh fuck, he is just gonna go fully psycho in a way that we have never fucking seen, and it's gonna be incredible.
As I think I said the other week, it's like, it's just when you think you can't be shocked, you've seen the worst they've got to do. It's gone as low as you can go. How do you get worse? And then the octopus scene with the deep.
Yeah.
And you're like, that's horrifying in an entirely new and creative way, and my hat, sir, is off.
I will say there is another octopus scene in Herogasm.
Actually, I should be expecting it. It's kind of what they've done now. They've kind of like gone, oh, we're going to fuck you up even worse. We're going to go do something even more messed up. And like, but every time I do that, you're kind of like, we got more.
Yeah, and that's the power of this show, is they, unlike so many other shows where they kind of climax too soon or push the envelope too soon and it scares people, like what I was talking about with season 2 episode 7 of Stranger Things, where they pushed the boundary and tried to expand the world and people didn't like it, so they had to climb back. This is a show where clearly the producers have either entirely sold Amazon on everything that they're going to do and it's going, no, let us stick to our fucking guns here. Trust us. We have the audience that we need to keep this going. We have the right story, and they've done it, or they have got so much fucking pull over. They've got nude photos and videos of these executives.
I think it's been incredibly successful, but like it's incredibly successful.
Yeah.
It's like there are posters on streets around here. Everybody,
Yeah.
like in the amount of people you see talking about like what happened in the first episode of this season, like it's very obvious, and obviously Amazon are all about data. You know, they would know how many people are watching this show,
True.
how many streaming hours. I would not be surprised if it's one of their top shows in terms of streaming hours. And they're a weird one, Prime. Like we've talked about it before, how hard it is to their fucking platform's terrible. Like it's really hard to find new stuff on there. Like I mean, I'll pay Netflix, right? Like Netflix have terrible, like a lot of lesser content now. Like you know, Spiderhead last week. You know, but like their actual platforms, it's really easy to find what you want to find, and it's constantly in your face. This is what's new. This is what other people are watching. This is what's popular. Prime does none of that.
No.
The first thing at the top is here's a bunch of shit you can pay extra for.
Yeah.
Like, I bet you can fuck right up with that, Prime. But like, terrible platform. But like, you know, this I would be imagining is you know, one of their top shows. Like I can't think of too many other things that on Prime that are as must watch as this. I mean, other than maybe the Lord of the Rings thing that's coming fairly soon, right?
It's September, I think, for that one, or October.
So they would know that this has got pull, like, because they've got a 4th season lined up now. They've pissed off all their right-wing fans, apparently. I assume that's what's in Herogasm. You don't tell me, but there's been stories about how they've put offside all their right-wing fans. I'm like, how did you guys not get that this was taking the piss out of you the whole fucking time, guys?
It's the same way that Ali G was a parody of all of that type of person, and yet for so long they were the people who were like, oh yeah, it's great seeing my representation. It's like, do you not see that he's doing this because
the people weren't really thinking that they were like, I never heard that. I mean, I know.
I did.
I always enjoyed the fact that it was very British in the sense you had this guy getting very respectable people on his show and then taking the utter piss out of them because they don't think, at least initially, people didn't realize that he was taking the mickey. But people actually, I guess, people thought he was legitimately representing them. Oh my God.
I knew a number of people going through middle school, high school, and college who purposely dressed like him because they said, oh, it's great to see someone like me on TV.
Wow.
Okay. You don't get comedy, do you?
Wow. Okay.
I can't wait for you to catch up on The Boys because I want to talk about it.
I try to. This week, I'm trying to catch up on the Orville. But
yes,
which is very good, by the way. If you're not enjoying the new season of the Orville, it's very, very good. But you know, so many things, so little time.
Yeah, so many things, so little time. Well, at least we don't have Kenobi for me to talk about anymore.
Well, don't worry, I didn't bother. I mean, I keep seeing people talk about how good it was, and you just like,
I don't understand it. And there's people going, oh, come on, we need a season 2. It's like, no, we fucking don't. No, just no, stop, enough, no more.
Hey, you know what? You let people enjoy things. They liked it. I don't care.
It's not time for sponsors yet, and I thought we were going to have Trek Respective.
We will have Trek Respective, but you gotta. Sometimes some of my windows decide I'm going to play something here, and I'm like, I didn't ask you to do that. Trek, not time for Trek Respective yet, but I can talk quickly. If you've done it for boys.
Yeah. I don't want to go into spoilers, so yeah, I'm good.
Went to the movies last week.
What did you see at the movies?
I actually went to see George Michael Uncut was the name of the documentary. Now, and that is an unironic, so Freedom Uncut. George Michael Freedom Uncut, I think is what they were selling it as in Australia. And that is an unironic title that is not meant to be a double entendre a la South Park, bigger, longer, and uncut. This is a documentary, unsurprisingly, that George Michael himself was working on. That is described as his last work. He was working on this towards the end of his life in 2016.
I'd totally forgotten he died.
Me too. But the only reason I remember is because I was in Berlin and he died on Christmas Day. And I remember going, okay.
That's right. Yeah.
I kind of forgot he was alive.
Yeah.
So this is actually a repackaging of a documentary. This documentary has aired before on British television, I think about 4 or 5 years ago.
Okay.
You'd be surprised there have been fairly limited developments in George Michael's career since he died.
It's strange how they've confirmed life after death in a George Michael doco.
20 minutes. They added some new material. Obviously, I haven't seen the original version, so I don't know what was in that one as compared to this one. But there is some, I believe, extra material in here if you have seen the original and you're wondering whether or not to see this one. And this got a cinema release in cinemas worldwide Wednesday, June 22nd. So it was almost like a one-night only thing at most cinemas in Melbourne. It was playing a lot of places. This is why I initially had asked if we could postpone or reschedule the show last week, but we couldn't organize it. Fortunately, I found out it was playing in Hawthorne on Friday, and it was chock-a-block full, the cinema. Full.
Okay.
Probably people like me who are going, I can't make it on a Wednesday. Could you play it any other night? Yeah. And I suspect I may have been the only straight man in the room. Not that, I'm just saying, George had a particular demographic who were his fans.
Wait, he was gay?
He was gay. Now, I went with Michelle, she of the Trek Perspective, and I took her along because she is, or was, should I say, is a big fan of George Michael and Wham before that. So I thought she would enjoy this. She did not, and nor did I. Okay. This is not a good documentary in any way, shape, or form. And it's not just me saying this because I think it's fair to put my hand up and go, I was never a particularly big fan of George Michael at all. I don't like he's got a couple of good songs, I guess, but I really not my jam at all, George Michael at all. So the film opens with like a 2-minute ad for a re-release of one of his albums from the 90s, his album Older.
Okay.
And then we had an entirety of the film clip Freedom 90. That's the one with all the supermodels.
Okay,
a lot of them have supermodels, but anyway, Freedom 90. The film's named Freedom, so I guess, but eventually you listen to a film. So I get like 7-8 minutes of stuff, and I leaned over to Michelle, said, if this is going to be fucking an hour and a half, 2 hours of music videos, I'm going to go to the bar downstairs and I'll see you afterwards. It wasn't, fortunately, 2 hours of music videos. But it's not good. It's not good. I guess the idea of thing about a documentary is that we've talked a lot in the past. We always come back to our idea about biopics. But I guess a documentary, you still need a story. You are telling a story, but you're telling a real story using the real people. In this case, lots and lots of a fair bit of archival footage and interviews with people who are still, friends, colleagues, professional people who knew him and stuff. But it's not really there. There's no guiding story through, I don't know anything about George Michael, so I thought this could be interesting, I don't know how he started Wham, really. I don't know very much about Wham. I remember how big Wham were in the early 80s, but I'm that old. But, I don't know anything about their success. I don't know what happened to them at the end. I don't know what happened to their relationship. There's only two of them. And we sort of rush through that. Rush. Oh, Wham, I was in a band called Wham. I always wanted to be famous, and I knew this guy from school, and his name was Andrew, and we were in a band, and we were really successful, and then we broke up. And it's like, I don't know, 15 minutes, I'm guessing, of a movie is just on his career of Wham. Wow. And then we're at the break. They had a farewell concert together. Okay. And we never get under the surface of that. We're like, what was it like working with Andrew? Why did you decide to stop working together? I'm assuming it's because he wanted to be more famous or whatever, but I don't know. Was there a falling out? I don't know. How did Andrew feel about that? Was your relationship? Do you ever feel like working with him again? Andrew is not in the film. If you're wondering who Andrew is, Andrew was the other guy in Wham.
Yeah.
We don't even talk about him, really. It's just pretty much done. And then we're moving on to his solo career and how big of Faith was and how famous he became and how many concerts it was and how much I took out of him and blah, 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 blah. The only part of the film that really gets interesting is just after we talk about his record that came out in 1990, which was, two things. One, I didn't realize how much pushback there was against him in the African American community for him doing black music. Their words, not mine. Which I never really thought of him doing black music, but like it was just pop music to me. But
yeah,
they do make a point in the film of just him getting played on African American radio and doing like TV. He won like best soul record or something at the Grammys, which apparently that kind of set people off because that's a black award. You know, that was he beat Gladys Knight and the Pips or somebody, you know, like actual African American artists, and like, but he's white, you know, so that was interesting. Like I didn't know about that. And then he released his second record called "Listen to That Prejudice." And after we talk about that, we actually talk about his love life for a little while, about the first time he ever fell in love with a guy he actually met at a concert in Rio, and who passed away only a couple of years later from AIDS. Now, I knew nothing of his story, and there was some interesting, really nice home video footage that two of them had taken in their trips around Brazil, and because the guy was Brazilian, and stuff like that. And he talked about, you know, at length about, you know, how he found out he was ill and how it scared the shit out of him, because if he had AIDS, what was incredibly risky to George as well.
Yeah.
Obviously, at least I don't think he had AIDS. No one ever mentioned it if he did. So I don't believe he did. You don't believe he was HIV positive. That was interesting. That was the only time we got underneath the surface and learned something about him. And then the film drags on forever. And at one point in time, Michelle leaned over to me and goes, "I can't believe we're still in the 90s." The film is 127 minutes. I'm guessing it gets to about the 2-hour mark. And we haven't even talked about the time he was arrested in LA for masturbating in a public toilet. Which, of course, is you remember that? It was a really, really big deal. He got arrested for propositioning, I think, propositioning a police officer.
Yeah.
And then he went, I mean, that was actually kind of cool, was he kind of went and released the album afterwards, and the big single was called Outside, where he's dressed as a police officer in the film clip. And
That's right.
And that was kind of interesting to see how he handled that. And you're like, yeah, he handled that really well. But, like, he rushed, like he spent so much time dwelling on stuff in the 90s, and the album I mentioned, they were re-releasing the album Older. We had like giant, it felt long, clips of songs that he was recorded, and this is what I was thinking, and this is why I recorded this song, and you know, this thing, this is what it meant to me, and blah blah blah. And they're not even famous songs, like they're really obscure tracks, ones I've never heard before. So it was really boring. And I found myself, while I was watching it, because this is how excited I was. Like, if I was a big fan of him, you know, if this was David Bowie, who I'm a massive, massive fan of, and this was documentaries about David Bowie, and you were telling the same type of story about him that you're now telling about George Michael, would I find it entertaining? I think the answer is no.
Yeah.
Because they're not telling me a story
of moments. No,
it's just a jibbly jabbly, like stuff happened, you know, like, and they're just rushing through stuff at, like, you know, you're spending ages talking about some really obscure stuff that I don't care about. Like, I mean, I might think it's cool to see, you know, a couple of clips of him recording songs in the studio, but you know, I just don't know that it would have the necessary pulling me through the film to actually keep me entertained, even if it was somebody I was very, very interested in. I'm going to be very familiar with their music, right? As a fan. Yeah. Like, I'm a huge fan of Bowie. I've seen multiple different live versions of every song you can think of. But you know what? I mean, we're still waiting. Someone's going to make that David Bowie film one day.
One day.
I like Rocket Man and Bohemian Rhapsody. But, you know, I would kind of want, tell me something I don't already know. Give me some insight into the man. Give me some insight into the career. Give me some insight into, he was recording this amazing life-changing album. What was he thinking? What was he listening to? What was he doing? How was his life? Who was he living with? You know, none of that. Yeah. None of that in this film, except for one bit, really, that dealt with his romance with his now deceased partner. And we don't even mention the fact he died. It's not even mentioned apart from some text on the screen.
Wow.
Like, I would have thought maybe a cool idea would have been to pick up the work George had done, get somebody else in, and, you know, just finish it off with maybe some closing interviews with people who knew him and loved him. So we've got interviews with like Ricky Gervais, Liam Gallagher, Elton John, Mary J. Blige, very, very famous people. But it almost feels like that would happen before he died. They just don't seem to really, they don't seem to actually take any poignancy of the fact that he died quite young.
Yeah.
So I don't think anyone was looking forward to. I mean, you can't see it at the cinema now, but I'm sure it'll be released on DVD and it'll probably end up on streaming somewhere. Michelle, I said, huge fan. George Michael, she didn't like it either. So we were both pretty bored. So, and just to take it from me as a hater, that as somebody who was a signed, sealed, and delivered fan, she didn't dig it either. So I would say, even if you are a really big fan, I mean, so this is definitely only for the fans, but even if you are a big fan, go in with very low expectations.
Yeah. Okay. It feels like it's that ongoing issue of documentaries and biographies of people, and that finding that right balance of do you tell a very focused moment about a very focused moment of their life, a very formative moment or a transformative moment of their life, or do you try and tell their whole life story? I am mildly curious to see what's going to happen and what kind of story they try and tell with this Baz Luhrmann Elvis, which is getting high praise at the moment. I've never been much of a fan of George Michael, Elvis.
Yeah.
But it's sort of like that. I know that there's some interesting things, particularly like the last years of his life. That would be fascinating to see the deconstruction of the myth that is Elvis. But there's too much money in the name Elvis. I can't imagine they will do that. The idea of going into his origin story, which definitely seems to be one of the driving forces of the trailers, at least for Elvis, is interesting. But then George Michael, when he was 1963 to 2016, he was not old. He was 52 years old. And he wasn't a big star until a bit later in his life. So it's like, okay, you've got a smaller window.
Think about the stories. He was saying he was a big star from 18. We take when Wham hit the big scene. He was famous from then. That's what part of the early parts of a story. One of the interesting parts of a story that they jettison and don't explore is what is the impact of fame on such a young man.
Yeah.
And he just talked about the exhaustion that he felt about fame and a lot of his legal battles with his record label, which again I didn't know anything about. But they're splotchy. She needs to be kind of an arc. I think the problem here is that he wrote it and he made it himself.
Yeah.
And maybe he was just a little too close to the subject matter, right?
Yeah.
He's also not a filmmaker. I think he had someone helping him as the co-director listed here. But I think maybe it would have been better off to have had someone like an Alex Gibney, who maybe would not be the person because it's not the kind of film he makes. But somebody like that come in and go, here are my archives. You have 100% access to my archives and me. Yeah. I want to make my story, and this is what I think it is.
Yeah.
And that person's job should have been to craft what the arc of a story was. What is the story here? Is it a shy person who wanted fame, despite the fact he couldn't handle it, and hence it destroyed him, or whatever. That story isn't there. We're getting splitches and blotches and different parts of his life, and it's a bit like if I sat down and explained my life to someone. Shocking to the listeners of his show, it would probably make a very confusing story, and it wouldn't make a whole lot of sense. A bit like this show. It was. I like rock and roll and music documentaries, and quite often, even if it's about an artist, Mike Judge, Safiza did a show a few years ago where he would interview country and western stars and would then animate the interviews.
That's right. I remember.
I can't remember what it was called, but I actually really enjoyed it because I hate country music. But I knew nothing about these people. And some of them were like names you'd heard of, like Merle Haggard, who's a reasonably famous country and western star. And you'd watch this and you'd go, this is fascinating. It's just interesting stories. And unfortunately, this film did not do that. This told boring stories and spent far too long on the music because obviously it meant a lot to George, but I didn't care.
it's that kind of thing of like it was one of the problems that we had with the Bohemian Rhapsody thing of it's still a touring band, they are still making money, so they are not going to sully their expression and the way that people look at them. And with George Michael being the driving force behind what this started off as, it's like it takes a very, very mature, very unusual individual to analyze their life and present their life as just like, here is everything, all the good, all the bad, all the fucked up shit I did. I'm not hiding anything. I just want you to see me. That's rare. And it's usually something that it makes for good, interesting stuff if presented, but at the same time, it's going to potentially tarnish the brand per se.
I guess so. I mean, this is a fairly sober look at himself in parts. My main objection was the fact that I guess it's a bit like I don't know if you've ever collaborated on something. You've worked on screenplays and comic books and stuff before. But you've ever collaborated with someone and they go, "No, I want this thing in here," and you're like, "So it's a bit shit, that thing, like it's derivative or it doesn't work." They're like, "No, I must have this thing. I really want this thing. I love this thing." And part of the book, this character, this story and element, you're like, I can't pull you off it because you just are so in love with it and you're too close to see that drags the whole third act down or it's stupid or whatever. I remember years ago I tried to collaborate on a screenplay with someone and he had a character in it called Dr. Nick. And I was like, you can't call him Dr. Nick because it's like, why? It's like, hi, everybody. And you're like, hi, Eric. It's like, so have you seen The Simpsons? He's like, oh, yeah, but no, that's his character's name is Dr. Nick because I'm basing it on someone I know. And that was his name. And I'm like, could he call him something, anything else? Dr. Mike? Mm-hmm. No, it has to be Dr. Nick. Will not budge on it. I'm like, oh, fuck off, all right? Like, this isn't going to work.
That's tough. That's tough.
But I think it's kind of what maybe for George. Like, no, these songs mean so much to me. And people are going to be really interested. And when I explain what I was thinking about when, why I chose to cover this Stevie Wonder song in his album that no one's ever heard. And you're like, I don't think they're as interested as you are, mate.
Yeah.
That's all I have to say about this, but I do think it's time. It's time tonight again.
Yeah. For the show of shows.
The thing that everybody's been tuning in for, except our audience.
It's the Trek Respective.
This week it's Star Trek 4: The Quest for Peace.
Is it The Quest for Peace? I thought it was
The Voyage Home.
Yeah.
I'm being a smartass.
You fucker.
We forgot the name last week, remember? When we called it The Quest for Peace.
I remember. Don't say that I don't remember.
So this is episode 4, Star Trek 4, The Voyage Home.
The Voyage Home. The Long Voyage Home.
Oh, is it long? Actually, not as long as Star Trek 1. There we go. Welcome to episode 4 of The Trek Respective, the episode where we try and keep it under 15 minutes. Welcome, Michelle.
Hello, Travis. How are you?
I am fine and dandy today.
And dandy,
because this week we watched Star Trek 4, The Quest for Peace. Sorry, The Voyage Home. This is, when I was a kid, this was my favorite of the Star Trek films.
In one sentence, why was it your favorite?
I love time travel.
Okay. So very anti-Rick and Morty then.
And it was the most relatable. It was fun. It was the most entertaining, really. I mean, it wasn't dealing with big issues terribly much in this one, which I do enjoy, but it was kind of a silly story, but done well, and they seemed very human. And who could forget the classic line, nuclear vessels? Now you understand. You've been initiated. So
how do these things being? Who knows?
I will apologize if it sounds a bit iffy tonight. My internet is playing up. I don't know why. I'm back in the 90s with my internet speeds tonight, but we'll struggle through and we'll bring you our usual product, if you can call it that.
You can always dial up in again.
We could always dial up, but yeah, it's just like I remember that days. So this is the fourth Star Trek film, as I sort of indicated. It is made in 1986. To save Earth from an alien probe, Admiral James T. Kirk and his fugitive crew go back in time to San Francisco in 1986 to retrieve the only beings who can communicate with it, humpback whales. This was directed again by Leonard Nimoy, who directed the third one as well. Story by Leonard Nimoy, Harv Bennett, and the usual cast of people. No one interesting this time, apart from the usual cast, I would think. It's also one of the higher rated films from the original series of films. So it's a 7.3 on IMDb and a 71 Metascore.
Wow, is that with Russian bots doing that sort of clicking there, or is that actual real people clicking that at a 7 point?
It's an interesting one. You talk to people in the Trek community. I always expected it. Oh, I loved this film when I was a kid. I thought everything else would be. You talk to a lot of people and they find it a bit silly. But I think it's possibly the most accessible Trek film, really, because I mean, it's not. You don't need a lot. It's not really intimidating. Not most of it doesn't take up in space.
Yeah, it's an interesting film. I feel like saying again with the Klingons, but
There weren't really any in this.
No, but they were at the start.
It's one, yeah. So it was the Klingon Klingon ambassador. He has some cool lines.
Yeah, this is Star Trek does climate change in the form of how the 80s could deal with climate change, which really was through animals. Because remember how there was all those protect this species, protect. That was very 80s of the time.
This is a very
the climate change stage of things. So that's really interesting. So basically, Star Trek does hippiedom and San Francisco, which is fascinating to watch. And Star Trek does camp in the 80s, so that was fun, and a little bit of feminism too, because you've got that modern woman in
Gillian.
love with with her work. She's a marine biologist, which is what doesn't stereotypically everybody want to be a marine biologist when they're a kid.
George Costanza did.
That's it. And I also think in 30 Rock is that joke as well, that Jack, the corporate CEO, wanted to be a marine biologist when he was young as well. So I think it's a thing. So she's a marine biologist and in love with the animals, trying to save these animals against greedy. What's the guy that's trying to put one on her? But
oh no, you're talking about Bob.
Bob.
I think Bob needs his own spin-off, really.
Well,
Star Trek Bob.
Star Trek Bob, how to pick up the lady.
Bob, I think Bob wanted some from Gillian, but he was getting none. I think Bob's not actually the bad guy here. Bob, it was the whalers. The whalers are the bad guys in the end, of course.
And I like how they put that footage in of how they kill the whales and stuff like that. So that was actually quite, I found, political, to be completely honest.
Trek's always been political.
Trek's always.
As I said to you before, like having your first interracial kiss happen on network television in what it was 66, 67 or so. That's inherently a political statement. Roddenberry's vision was inherently political.
Well, let me tell you where I'm at with Star Trek at the moment, having now viewed my fourth film. I want to like it. I want to believe, like the post. I want to, but I don't quite. There's something still that just doesn't sit with me, and I can't work out if it's because it's just, as I said last week, of its time, and I've missed that window, or I'm finding now because I'm at comparison with the Orville, which I'm up to date with all the episodes, and I also have it on as background story. So I find the stories interesting, but I'm always remembering that I'm seeing it on a screen. I'm not engrossed. I'm not like, oh my God, I'm in this. I forgot I exist as a human being because I'm watching this story unfold. It's more of a case of, oh, okay, I see the strings, the puppet, I see the actual, that it's honest, that it's fake. Now, that doesn't mean it's because it looks kitschy that it is, that that's the feeling I'm getting, because I've seen plenty of kitschy things that I'm still being engrossed in. I just don't know if that's the way the storytelling is that it's just, see, with the search for Spock, there was real pathos there with Kirk. That engrossed me. I was in there. But this one, again, I'm not quite sure whether they're doing it sufficient justice. And I don't know if it's because trying to link the big ideas with the story is so hard to do. Again, I'm also finding that clunky with the Orville, which you say is the inheritor of Star Trek, or the child of Star Trek. But yeah, I'm not quite sure what's going on there. I might have some further thoughts after watching the next one.
You'll have thoughts.
But I did not find it, it's not, so far it's not my favorite one. It is, I think, because they go back in time to San Francisco, so you get to see the future react to the present. Well, for us, the future react to the past. For us now is quite funny and entertaining, you know. But other than, like, you know, we're beyond money. All these people still use money, or, you know, the Russian, this guy's Russian. So we're beyond state, we're beyond commerce. We've gone to a very, so I get what you're saying about it being a very optimistic view of the future, that we do actually get to that point without blowing ourselves up as a species.
Oh, we've blown ourselves up. This is the recovery.
This is what?
This is the recovery. This is how there is a horrible war which decimates humanity in the 21st century in the storyline.
Oh, okay.
You'll find out more about that as the series goes on.
Oh, okay.
Um,
So yeah, it's just missing something, a little bit of heart. I think it's just missing heart still.
I think that they are, as we watched them together, and it's been a long time since I've seen these early films, that they are showing their age, and not just in the special effects department, but also in the way they're told. And as you and I were watching the other night, I made the observation that I find it a little annoying. They keep introducing these story elements and characters and events which are never mentioned ever again in Trek lore. At least, I mean, people can correct me if I'm wrong, because like there's a lot of Trek lore, books, TV shows, cartoons. But so in this film, obviously there's for those who are uninitiated to Star Trek 4, a giant space probe turns up out of nowhere, headed towards Earth, making a big funny noise, and it exerts a level of energy which actually disables spaceships and star bases around it, and eventually all pretty much of Earth. And it's basically vaporizing the oceans and ionizing the atmosphere. And no one can figure out how to answer this thing. It's a probe. In the end, the Enterprise crew, now flying a stolen Klingon warbird, figure out that the sounds the probe is making whale song, humpback whale song. And as the humpbacks are now extinct, they go back in time to kidnap a couple of humpback whales and bring them back to the future. And as Dr. McCoy says, tell that thing what it to go do with itself, which is a very, very 80s story to tell. They don't ever mention it ever again, right?
Yeah, but why do the space whales want to talk to the Earth whale? Like,
well, I think the insinuation is that whales were alien life that was seated on Earth.
So what, they come and check on them? This is a care package?
Wouldn't we check on if we seeded life on another planet? Wouldn't we go and check on it if it went silent?
Is this a mental health check or something on the Earth?
I never found this confusing. It just seemed to make sense. Why wouldn't they check on them?
Why though?
Because they haven't answered. Like if you were calling me for a week and I didn't answer my phone, I imagine you might come by my apartment building and try and figure out what was going on.
Sure.
Or call the cops.
Well, you also live in the same city as I do.
But like, imagine if it was possible for you to traverse the space in a fairly, timely manner.
So you say these whales in relationship with these Earth whales?
I'm suggesting, I think the insinuation is that the space people, whoever sent the probe,
no, call them space whales. They're
space whales seeded the whales on Earth. These are an alien species seeded on Earth by the space whales. And they've been calling and they're not getting an answer, so they decided to come around and see what was going on. And
Well,
this
that's
is
just the worst.
this is the space whales version of looking in the back window to see what's going on. So you can see a body on the floor. Oh, there's blood. Those true crime shows. Oh, he opened the door, and then he called 911. So this is them calling 911, maybe.
See if the whale's been put in the basement or something like that.
But the annoying thing is that this is never mentioned again. The space probe is never mentioned again. The whales are never mentioned again. The fact that the whales are from space is never mentioned again. They bring back a woman from the 20th century.
Oh, she fits in quickly without any issues. Not even like a, I don't know, time travel, jet lag or anything like that. She's great. She's all the time immediately. That would have been an interesting story.
And she friend zones Kirk hard.
Yeah, nah. She knew what he was on about. That he's on about the ladies, and she's like, no, I'm about the whales. You know.
But this is why did you do
Love
something?
Love the whales.
Why didn't they do something with this character? Right? It's interesting, right? She's a person from the 20th century in the 23rd century. Trust me, all of us Trek kids really, really wanted that to happen to us. You know, but you know, but they've just kind of well, we just won't tell that person. We never mention her ever again. We never mentioned the whales or a whale probe ever again. We never mentioned, I mentioned last week, we never mentioned V'Ger ever again. We never mentioned Khan. We never mentioned the Genesis planet or the Genesis weapon. You know, like it's.
You're complaining about is the same thing that you like about it, though. Is that
to a degree? It never bothered me before, but I can see how that would feel a little jarring to people today because we're so used to worlds.
There's no callback. There's no
movies in a shared universe is such a really common thing now. So this Trek world has set up this shared universe, obviously, because all these films happen in the same universe.
I think I've worked out what it is that actually is bugging me, right? Do you remember watching the A-Team when you were a kid?
The A-Team?
Yes.
Yes, I liked the A-Team.
Yes, I also enjoyed the A-Team. So anyway, they would go on an adventure, but there was no change to them. They'd go back to being the guy with the cigar was the leader and he was arrogant. I can't remember anymore.
Hannibal.
Yeah, that one. So you do get a little bit of change in this one. So Spock, feels a feeling by the end of it.
Well, this is a bit of.
He understands the plight of the one against the many. Why you?
This is technically the third film in this trilogy. So 2, 3, 4. I mean, this one's very loosely the third film in the trilogy because.
So in the last one, we get some growth from Kirk, right? And then we get a little bit of growth from Spock, but it feels, you know what it is? It's a TV series made into a movie, and that you need more to anchor it. And that's why I kind of come to this from the outside and go, okay.
Well, we've failed to impress you with one of the more impressive films because I'm just going to have to ask you to strap yourself in because it's going to be a hell ride from here, at least for the next one. For the next one, I had considered letting you off the hook for this one because I'll be letting myself off the hook for this one, but I'm genuinely interested to hear what you say about it because it's different. Let's just say that it's different, but it is. I think I probably would be widely agreed to be the worst Trek film made to date.
Is there some semblance of a plot in it, or is it like the first one where they're just all looking at each other like in a soapy?
Look, I've got to be honest, I probably haven't seen this film for over 30 years. It would be about 25, 30 years since I've seen this film. And I don't fondly remember it. That's why I haven't seen it again. I mean, it has, I suspect, more of a story, maybe even the first one. At least
basically what you're saying is torture me, torture you.
I mean, I had considered giving you the option to watch what I think most people would agree is the best episode of Star Trek ever made, which is Star Trek Next Generation, particular episode in that. But, introducing you to a new series and it only goes for an hour. And, as I said, I'm interested to hear what you think of this. And you next week have carte blanche, as you always do, to be as brutal about it as you wish, because I have absolutely.
I'm not being brutal. I'm actually being worse than brutal. I'm being.
You're being different, but you might feel differently about this one because this one's aggressively bad.
I wish I could be brutal. I'm just like.
But you might get some feelings about this one. But I said it's okay. 4, I can see how you might be a bit. Okay, it didn't do anything for me. The fifth one, like I said, is is offensively awful. So
You better line up the clickers then.
the clinkers will be out. We may well get the Rocky 4 palate cleanser up and running.
We still haven't gotten to Rocky 4. Terrible.
No, we didn't get to Rocky 4. But
okay, so
how many lockdowns are you going to go with this one?
This one's a 6 out of 10 lockdowns.
So only a 4 out of 10 normally. So you would say this is worse than the Wrath of Khan?
Yeah.
So this would be the second worst one you've seen so far.
I actually enjoyed the Wrath of Khan more than this one.
Rightio. Okay, so hot take there from Michelle. This one, Star Trek 4 did not.
I can't get past Khan's outfit. That was just the standout.
It is the hotness of Ricardo Montalban.
Completely.
The simmering Latino heat of Ricardo Montalban. It's just too much.
Yeah.
Thank you for enduring yet another one. There's only 9 to go. You're closer than you've ever been to finishing this task.
No.
She's enjoying it. I can tell. If she was a religious woman, she'd be praying, but she's not. So on that note, thank you very much, Michelle. We'll see you next week. And back to you, Spearsy.
Space whales, baby.
Space whales.
It is. I'm sorry, but the Trek perspective is the gift just keeps giving. I love it so much.
I enjoy that Michelle regularly pulls these little parts out of these films that I'd never considered before. Like I'd never thought, why are they interested in finding the whales? Like, who are these people? Because there are relevant questions the film fails to answer. The series never even tries. Like I said, they never talk about it ever again. But it's a fair question. It just made sense to me enough at the time. Maybe it's because I was young, but these are the kind of questions that can only be raised by an outsider.
It's true.
Star Trek 5 next week, and it is, like I said, a fucking awful movie.
I mean, for those who don't know, it is Captain Kirk and his crew must deal with Mr. Spock's long-lost half-brother who hijacks the Enterprise for an obsessive search for God at the center of the galaxy.
It's bad.
That's amazing.
It's like it's been a long time since I've seen it. Like I said, I did consider
this one. I think you have to make sure that you do point out the fact that it is directed by William Shatner.
Well, I would talk about Shatner. This is the first one Shatner directed. Leonard Nimoy did the previous 2. I think he was a much better director than Shatner was.
Yes, I think that is not a hard sell.
Anyway, that will be next week. Maybe may the Lord have mercy on Michelle's soul. She's got a hell right. I think 6 will redeem it. 6 is good, but
Yeah, I think this is the real humpback whale that you have to get over.
This is the nadir of a series. How they even got a deal for another one after this?
Yeah, it's quite impressive.
I think though they've brought back Spock's brother for Strange New Worlds, if I'm not mistaken. So. So maybe it's actually finally something that happens in one of these films is referenced somewhere else.
Okay.
But moving on, that's a Trek perspective. You had plenty of that. You were talking about a new animated series you've checked out.
So there's a new Netflix one called Spriggan. Now, it's an interesting one, purely because I'm trying to invest more time into the animated stuff on Netflix because of the report that came out that they are cutting funding for it, and there have been so many great animated shows. Love, Death and Robots. Arcane was fantastic. The fact that they are one of the few places where you can actually watch some other animes without having to buy Crunchyroll or Funimation. Like they've got some more One Piece things on there. The fact that they so far have been failing on live action adaptations of anime, but they still show some value in it. And they've got a movie coming out called The Sea Beast. And so I'm just trying to, like what I do with any show or movie that I like that doesn't necessarily do well, I try and buy the paraphernalia to give it some support. So I decided to try and watch this. And it's an interesting thing. The general premise of it is an ancient alien civilization's relics on Earth hold dangerous powers. The Arkham Corporation's Spriggan agents must keep them out of the wrong hands. It's a very basic breakdown of it. Something a little deeper here. Here we go. Deep in the Ararat Mountains of Turkey, a secret organization known as Arkham has found what is believed to be Noah's Ark. However, the U.S. Machine Corps, a rogue organization of the Pentagon, want to take over the Ark as a means for global supremacy. Only a special Arkham operative known as a Spriggan stands in their way. Japanese Spriggan Yu Ominae teams up with French Spriggan Jean-Jacques Mondeau to combat members of the U.S. Machine Corps, led by Colonel McDougal, a genetically enhanced boy with deathly psionic powers. However, they must act fast and stop McDougal before he uses the Ark for his own agenda. It's interesting because every episode, the opening kind of title screen, shall we say, is a bit of an explanation about this etched piece of metal that is extraterrestrial in some ways, but it kind of chronicles the downfall of a previous existing civilization on Earth and how technology destroyed them. And it warns of this happening again. And so much of it, so each episode is not necessarily connected. It is loosely, and I think it is generally trying to aim towards a grand finale, pulling all the threads together. But each episode or two episodes has sort of a standalone theme and thesis behind it. And a lot of them are actually kind of utilizing religious iconography in an interesting new way, which I do appreciate and I approve of, considering that's what my book does. So the idea of Noah's Ark being something from a lost civilization that is effectively this super machine to repopulate a planet and has the power and the potential to destroy a planet as well if put into the wrong hands is kind of a cool idea. And it toys with a lot of interesting ideas, but it also falls into a lot of typical anime tropes. And one of them is the fact that it's a young Japanese agent that is a bit of a hotshot agent, this Spriggan. This is Yu, voiced by Kyle McCarley, who I don't think I actually know any of his other stuff. He did the voice of 9S in the video game Nier Automata. He's done some voice for Ultraman, Bubble, a few bits and pieces, but there's certainly no big names that you'd look at and go, oh shit, they're in this. But he is your typical young high schooler who excels at everything else except high school. And you've got other bits like the nagging friend or co-school member who keeps on saying, why are you always so tired at school? And she doesn't know this secret agent side of him. You've got the sort of like the mentor characters and the ridiculously outlandish, hyper violent bad guys that talk with the twisted voices and just absolutely chew up the scenery and the idea of desecrating a body and all of that sort of stuff. So it's very tropey, but it's not awful. And the animation is pretty good overall. It is, some of it is a bit cheap, but the action animation is good, and the writing of it is overall good, if somewhat predictable. So I give this a passing grade so far. I think I've watched the first 8 episodes. Oh no, there's only 6 episodes released, so I must be Berserker, Crystal Skull. Oh, I'm on the final episode actually. In that case, that makes me very disappointed on how it's probably not going to all pull together in that case. Otherwise, it's going to be a really rushed final episode. But it's sitting on IMDb at sort of like 7.8. Its high was 8.1, which is the story about Noah's Ark. But yeah, just generally mid to high sevens is what it's getting, and I think that's fair. Like I said, the animation is generally good, the voice work is generally good, but it does rely quite heavily on some classic anime tropes. You'll very quickly get if you like it or not. Even from the first 5 minutes of the show, it sets its pace very quickly. I don't think this is a show that a lot of people would really kind of go, oh my God, it's fucking amazing. There's some elements of sort of like the fact that you has like an exosuit that gives him these extra abilities and things like that, and there's like body modifications through improvement of technology and medical improvements and things like that. So there's a little element of something like Akira or Ghost in the Shell, some of those the highbrow anime movies. They're very liberally borrowing from a lot of those for some of the settings and the themes and the ideas. Throwing it into a TV show, it's okay. It's a good waste of like each episode is, I don't know, 45 minutes or something like that. So it's slightly longer than your standard anime episode. Some of the stories do work quite interestingly. There's a Forest of No Return, for example. I actually quite liked that one. Yu investigates a cursed forest and searches for Soma, the mythical nectar of immortality. He teams up with unlikely allies to find a way out. And it's that evolution of that story that's actually quite interesting. So that's what I say when the MacGuffin of each episode is an interesting narrative storytelling point, and they do try and actually put something new on it, which I do approve of, rather than, oh, seriously, it's the fucking Holy Grail story, or it's another one where someone's searching for the lost Ark of the Covenant, and you've seen it 1,000 times and you know what's going to happen. These ones are twisted and shown in slightly fresh light, so I do appreciate that. Other than that, I don't really have much to say on it at this point.
Would you recommend it to? I mean, is it strictly something for anime fans, or do you think it's something that could cross over?
I think this is quite a rather good proof of concept for if they wanted to do a live action TV show version of it. If they were going to invest into more of that reappropriation of religious iconography for a science fiction action show, I think it could be quite interesting. If they were able to kind of pull it all together and tell an overarching, compelling story over multiple seasons, I think there's a lot of potential here. The thing that I really wanted to kind of talk about, though, was it did get me to thinking about one of my favorite graphic novel series called Rex Mundi. It is King of the World. That's what Rex Mundi means. And it is a fantastic book written by Arvid Nelson. The first few collected artwork is by Eric J, who is a fucking awesome artist. I love him to bits. And it is essentially talking about the blood of Christ. And again, it's using that idea of a religious iconography and telling something different in the world around it. And I highly recommend anyone who can get their hands on the first volume of Rex Mundi to read it, because it is really good. And it has been under the stewardship of Johnny Depp's production company Nephilim. Only his production company for a very long time, since like the first volume was originally printed. I would love to see that turned into either an animated show or a live action show, because it would be fucking cool.
Question: has there ever been a decent live action remake, Western remake of an anime, or something like that? Or
no. But I think that it is, considering the persistent popularity of anime and the growing popularity of it in the Western world. I wouldn't be surprised if that is the next one that they really try and crack the nut of. Like, we talked about it ad nauseum about how they finally broke superhero movies and how to turn those into movies. We've said for a long time, video games are going to be the next one, but we're still kind of waiting for that real genuine out and out success. Technically, Detective Pikachu was a success.
Angry Birds was a massive success.
Angry Birds was a massive success. The two
Sonic
movies have been very successful, but they haven't kind of really broken into the zeitgeist of that. It's going to be interesting to see how that changes with whether or not the TV show of The Last of Us is going to be as successful. And we've got a lot of those things seem to be going into more, especially the more mature content games, seem to be going the TV route, like God of War. And there was another one that recently got talked about. I can't remember off the top of my head. But movies seem to still be a bit of a hard nut to crack for older audiences. All of the successes have been for younger audiences, which kind of makes sense generally. But a successful anime adaptation, that is kind of the golden goose, I think. And it's going to be one, it's going to take someone essentially doing a Lord of the Rings on it, I think, where they have the complete story and they just go, okay, from day one, we know that this is going to be a 3-movie picture and we are going to tell the story. We're going to start here. We're going to end here. We're going to film the whole thing. We're going to take our time and get it right. They can't just go, all right, we're going to do one movie and see how it goes, because no anime is small enough for one movie, frankly. I mean, maybe you could get away with it with something like One Punch Man, because it's a fun premise, and then you can build from there by introducing it as essentially a superhero movie. So you piggyback as a superhero movie being an anime, kind of like what Marvel do now with the superhero veneer over the buddy road trip movie and things like that. This is, it's a superhero movie veneer on an anime. It would be an interesting way of doing it. But for something like Naruto, even some like Western animations like The Legend of Aang, that was a terrible movie by M. Night Shyamalan. They left too much of the movie story out. It didn't make sense. There was too much story to tell in one film. So I think it's going to be a very, very hard nut to crack. And I think we're going to see more of the live action stuff, like Netflix are doing a live action version of One Piece. They are doing a live action version of The Legend of Aang. And
Cowboy Bebop works so well.
Yeah, I tried going back and watching some more of that, and it's just, no, it's just wrong.
I don't think, I mean, like, I'm not saying it's, and nothing's impossible. And you're right. Like, there was no superhero films with box office poison until they weren't. I just think anime and manga is niche. It's so niche. And I just don't know that the people who like what anime and manga bring to the table are probably quite happy with what they've been given in terms of Japanese animation. And the people who don't like that are probably not interested in seeing it. Like, I have tried anime and manga, and generally speaking, it just bores me to tears. It's the same thing over and over and over and over again, you know, like, but yeah, it has its place. Obviously, people enjoy whatever they want to enjoy.
Stop ruining the things I like, Travis.
It's just not for me, but like, it's okay. But yeah, I have no interest in seeing a live action anime. Like, we watched Ghost in the Shell for one of our series back in the past, and I thought the animation was okay. I just don't know what all the fuss is about. But I mean, even then, I wasn't interested in seeing the Scarlett Johansson version. You know, I just wonder if it's that disconnect of like, how do you basically need to take something that's beloved by an existing audience and expand it by 100 to make, you know, all the money you need to make it successful. And it's an expansion beyond, you know, this very niche audience, because they're very unusual stories usually. These are not traditional. This is not your traditional hero's journey usually.
Mm.
So how do you got to find the diamond in the rough. I mean, Akira has been kicking around Hollywood for 20 years, like every man's had to go with that. I think Jordan Peele was the last one who had his name against that one.
Who?
Jordan Peele.
Didn't Taika Waititi have his name on
maybe
it?
It was Taika. It might have been Taika who had his name again next to it for now. It's like everyone has a go.
They're talking about him doing something entirely unique and different in the Star Wars universe. It's like, okay.
So I know, look, I mean, I'm not saying it's impossible. You're right. There's Taika. He's currently got his name next to it. I'm sure it was Jordan Peele for a while, but I could be wrong.
That would actually be kind of fucking cool.
Look, I mean, if anyone can, Taika's an excellent choice. I'm just saying George Miller was offered a chance, everyone's had it's the town bike.
Yeah.
Everyone's had a go at it. But I just wonder if people can see the value in taking very niche, very unusual, weird stories that often these things. I remember you describing Food Wars to me. I'm like, like very. I mean, and they should definitely should exist. I'm just saying that, like, how do you men take that story and sell it to the person, the person who walks up to the multiplex on a Saturday night, and people don't do that anymore. Yeah. So how do you then take that out and go put it on maybe a streaming service and make people go, I'm going to watch that?
Yeah. See, that's why I think that doing a superhero movie version of One Punch Man would be
One Punch Man could work. That has that. See, I actually enjoyed some of that.
Yeah,
and it's probably something you could sell.
Yeah, because it would be comedy. You can imagine someone with that kind of casual, dull face but physical impressiveness when they want to, of like a Ryan Reynolds. In that situation, just slight bit of improvisation on the script just to make those scenes pop. Big action sequences that almost kind of like a purposefully dumb parody of something like Will Smith's Hancock, where they tried to do that more mature, serious, weird superhero movie, and they just got it wrong in many ways. I could see that working, and if they did that, then obviously it's like, have you seen the new One Punch Man movie? And it would be like, this is the time when the aliens invade, and he has to fight, and you get to see all these other superheroes and stuff. But for something like Food Wars, that is designed to be a story told over a long period of time.
I'm picking a particularly ridiculous example there. Often the stories are quite complex. They're not straightforward. Zelda must save Link. Link must save Zelda from the evil person. Mario must save a princess from Bowser's castle. Their brand also means questionably how much does their brand mean? But then again, look, Marvel's brand meant nothing once upon a time, so it could happen. Yeah. Should we move on? We are running long.
Yeah, we're getting long in the tooth. So
quickly, am I going to do some Nitro reviews here quickly?
Yes, go for it.
So we were looking for our palate cleanser this week, and I don't remember why we decided not to go with Rocky IV again. So we will get there. We do have Rocky IV as a palate cleanser. And the palate cleanser this week we chose was a little bit of an unusual one. Wanting to avoid a rerun of last week's evisceration of Sex and the City, I managed to convince Michelle to take a look at Zack and Miri Make a Porno because she hadn't seen it before. I haven't seen this since it came out.
Yeah.
This, of course, is the Kevin Smith written and directed film. Lifelong platonic friends Zack and Miri look to solve their respective cash flow problems by making an adult film together. As cameras roll, however, the duo begin to sense that they may have more feelings for each other than they previously thought. And this is interesting. So this stars Seth Rogen as Zach, Elizabeth Banks as Miri, Craig Robinson's in here, Brandon Routh, Justin Long, obviously Jason Mewes is in there again, as he always is with Kevin Smith films. Jeff Anderson's in this, so he is best known as Randall from Clerks, the fast-talking video store. She frosted me
like a fucking cake.
And I remember liking this film when it came out. It's one of Kev's probably better rated films of late. It's got a 6.5
Yeah.
on IMDb. It's up there with Jane Silent Bob Strike Back at 6.8. Clerks 2 has a 7.3, which I find surprising. I didn't like that.
Wow.
Mallrats has a 7. I also didn't like that as much as everyone else, apparently. And for those who know, Kevin Smith is kind of the inspiration behind why we do this. So you can blame him. He's on Twitter. Tell him. And that said, though, I think you and I are both fans, but at the same time, we've just kind of seen his work in the last 10 to 15 years and gone, okay, I'm glad you're doing what you like. You like doing this kind of thing. You're doing what you want. I'm good, but it's not good. You know, Tusk wasn't good. The Nazi one, what was it? Yoga Hoses. Yoga Hoses was fucking terrible. I haven't even been brave enough to see the latest Jay and Silent Bob reboot film because I've just heard it's fucking awful.
Yeah.
Red State's probably the last good one.
Yeah, that was
and that's
good.
Going back over 10 years now.
Yeah.
Zack and Miri I haven't seen since it came out in 2008. And how has it aged? Not great.
Oh, no.
Not great. On a number of fronts. One, the politics of this film. I know we say it a lot on the show, but you could not make this film anymore. All the gay jokes, you know, and they're good-natured gay jokes. They're not like, fag, you know, like, you know, say Bill and Ted. The film starts early in the film. Zack and Miri go to a high school reunion, and Miri is looking to get together with high school heartthrob Bobby Long, played by Brandon Routh, only to find he's there with Justin Long's Brandon, who is an adult film star, and obviously turns out Bobby Long is actually gay.
Yeah.
And there are, first of all, you've got two straight actors here. I think they're straight. As far as I know, they're straight. Two straight actors playing gay men. I don't know that you can do that anymore. I think you'd have to cast probably. There's been quite a bit of blowback about that recently. And other, we're talking, was it the Tom Hanks film? We were talking about, was it
Philadelphia.
Philadelphia. Oh, we couldn't make it this way because we have to cast gay actors. And I'm like, I have a real problem with that, but we won't get into that now. But like, they are straight, so you can't do that. And they're also kind of parody gay people. They're sort of playing to some tropes of gay characters. Now, look, I still think they're funny, and I still think actually those two characters are two of the more amusing and entertaining characters in the film, and I really enjoy their those two guys have chemistry together. There's over the credits, there's a faux commercial for Zack and Miri's We Make Your Porno company, and they give sort of a referral. What do you call them? They're basically there to talk up the company. And Justin Long's like, if I could compare his asshole to a flower, like an orchid, I would, you know, and it's just, he does it so well. Justin Long, you don't see enough of him anymore. I thought they were funny, but I'm like, you just can't make those jokes about a subculture like, gay people anymore. You just can't. Look, I mean, and maybe that's a good reason. I'm not going to get into the politics of why, but I just don't think you can. I think it would be very, very controversial. It would probably be, you might get cancelled if you're making fun. If you're seen to be making fun of gay people.
Yeah,
and that's done throughout the film. So then that sort of thing, I don't think it's aged well, and I don't think you'd make it today with those characters, which is a shame because they are, as I said, some of the better characters in the film.
Yes.
The other part hasn't aged well. I remember looking at this going, this is Kev, I remember thinking this is Kevin doing the two things like about chasing Amy, which apparently now is also incredibly problematic. I hadn't even thought about that until Michelle pointed it out to me while we were watching this. I'm like, yeah, I guess it is. But like,
ruining all my nice things.
I really like that film though, and I still really want to like that film. Can we just ignore that for now, please? But Kevin does that really gross out undergraduate humor, really ribald, really disgusting humor. You noted that "you keep frosting me like a cake" is a great line. And I'm not even going to describe the situation that occurred. That's one of the best scenes in the film. But he does that kind of, he married it really well for me, at least initially in the 90s, that kind of, the really, as I said, undergrad humor, dick jokes, poo jokes, sex jokes, with the kind of really sweet nature of, Ben Affleck's character in that film falling in love. And I kind of liked that he was doing both. He's like, we can laugh and we can be disgusting, but at the end of the day, people also have feelings, and you are gonna, it's okay to fall in love and feel these things. And I thought that at the time is what he'd done so well here. He kind of married those two things together well again. The really disgusting humor, along with the really sweet nature of a relationship between Zach and Mary here, which I thought he did well.
Yeah.
That hasn't held up quite so well. I mean, that is telegraphed from the first 5 minutes of the film. I mean, I guess maybe you're supposed to predict it, but it almost comes across as corny now. It felt really forced and corny now in a way that I didn't feel that way in 2008. So,
yeah,
I still think it's okay. I still think it's probably one of Kev's better films.
Yep.
That's, considering some of the stuff he's made, that's probably not saying very much.
He's definitely brought his average down, that's for sure.
He's certainly not in the realm of, I would say, something like, well, I still think Jay and Silent Bob Strike Back is great, and I think Dogma is great. Yes. I don't think it's quite on the level. It's not on those levels. It's certainly not down there with Yoga Hoses, though. It's not even near that bad.
Good order here, Yoga Hoser.
It's just kind of a little bit cheesy, a little bit corny, very predictable. And kind of by the numbers in a way that didn't feel by the numbers at the time, which is a bit sad. But I don't. And I guess if you're still a fan of Kev, I would be interested to hear other people's opinions. Maybe I'm being a bit harsh on it.
See, I enjoy Craig Robinson in this.
He's very good in this. Yeah,
he's always just on. One of my favorite bits, and just looking at some of the quotes, is where he's behind the counter and a customer walks up to him and he's like, "Hi, can I have a coffee? Black?" And he just instant response, "Can't you see we're talking? White?"
He does have, I think, so there's still laughs to be had in this film.
Yeah.
So that's, I think, what elevates it above a film like Yoga Hoses or Tusk, where I didn't think there were really any laughs in those films at all.
Yeah.
And they were just annoying and stupid. So it's just that's what it, the humor managed to cut through the corniness of a romance to really, really well the first time I saw it. And 15 years later, I'm not sure it does. If I can keep being a bit Nitro Express and keep moving through, because we want to get people
go for it.
onto their next thing. I did get around to seeing The Unbearable Weight of Massive Talent last night. I know you really, really enjoyed this, if I recall correctly.
I did enjoy it a lot, yes.
I didn't. And I'm not trying to be difficult here. I was pretty bored through most of this. For those who don't know, in this action-packed comedy, Nicolas Cage plays Nick Cage, channeling his iconic characters as his corp joins superfan Pedro Pascal and CIA agent Tiffany Haddish. I feel like this was kind of a one-note film. It was sort of one central joke to this film. And once you'd seen that, you'd kind of seen everything the film had to say. And that was Nick Cage playing Nick Cage. Oh, what wacky do, and him talking to his character based on, I guess, the character from an earlier film. I'm not a Nick Cage super fan, so I didn't exactly know what that character was.
Wild at Heart.
Which I've never seen. I think I only know it because it's got that famous meme of him making this crazy face in it. Pedro Pascal's very, very, very likable. He's very charismatic when he wants to be.
Yeah, he really
I thought he was actually the standout of this film, along with Sharon Horgan, who plays Nick Cage's wife, Olivia. She was fantastic. I thought she had some of the best scenes in this film. I was like, where have I seen her before? And I look her up and I'm like, nowhere. I don't know where I've seen her before, but I haven't seen many of the things she's in, but I hope I do, because she's very good. The other sort of little find here is Lily Sheen, who I assume is a Sheen. I don't know.
Yes.
Her parent is Michael Sheen and
Oh.
Kate Beckinsale. Okay, well, that explains why she's such a pretty young girl.
Yeah.
That's a different Sheen. I was thinking of the Charlie variety, perhaps.
Yes.
But no,
It's the British Sheens.
It's the British version, the Tony Blair Sheen.
Yes.
I don't know. I found this really boring. I felt like I'd seen all the moves before, it was a very thin story, and the only thing that kind of elevated it above that was Nick Cage being let loose on it, going be as Nick Cagey as you want to be, and all the really meta in-joke references about other Nicolas Cage films, and the clips from him and him replaying lines from them. Yeah, I don't know. Maybe I'm just too jaded for this world, but a lot of people seem to really enjoy it. Unfortunately, I wasn't one of them. I look, if you're a really big fan of Nicolas Cage, would you say you're a really big fan?
Not a really big fan, but I just much like I don't necessarily like all of the stuff that he does, but I love the fact that he always puts 120% effort into the things that he does, much like Tom Cruise. Like most of his movies are kind of all right, yeah, that's standard, but respect for him for he's 50 odd years old and he's climbing outside of a fucking thing. He learned how to fly a fighter jet for this movie. He puts the effort in. I respect that. And I do the same thing with Nicolas Cage. It's like, okay, you know what? I'm gonna do this movie, and I'm gonna just bring this to the character. I feel like he never actually even talks to the director about, okay, what do you need? What story do you want to show here? I think it's more so like, okay, I've read the script. I understand what you want, but I'm gonna go that way. And just he does his own thing, and it's like, okay, it's Nicolas Cage.
He should just be more picky with his projects, because I mean, I don't know if he's still short of money or he just makes whatever he can get his hands on. Like, send me a script or make it.
I would love to see him in a Tarantino movie.
I was kind of a little bit surprised when I found in the trivia of this. You can see that apparently initially the plan was the start of a film, the director he's chasing, he's supposed to be the role he's chasing. He's supposed to be in a Tarantino film. And he was supposed to be. I imagine there was an aim to be a cameo from Quentin. Obviously, as a director, he's meeting and then pitches to in the car park. But because of a pandemic, apparently they couldn't make that happen. So they had that no-name guy, whoever he was, who I even when I looked his name up, I'd still never heard of him.
Yeah,
be the guy. If you could have got a Scorsese or a Tarantino, it probably would have made that gag a little bit more fun. But that made you think, he's exactly the kind of actor who you would expect to go very, very nicely in a Tarantino film.
Yeah.
But they have never worked together. David Gordon Green, by the way, is the director he pitches to in the car park, and I've never heard of that guy. He did a Halloween film?
Yeah, he's
a couple of them.
Yeah.
And really, really nothing.
What are you talking about?
Pineapple Express. Okay, great. Yeah, good for you, mate. Take it over there. But you're right. He's exactly the kind of. Well, Nick has never worked with Quentin. That's an oversight. I wonder why they've just never connected on a role, or they don't like each other. But he's Hollywood royalty because he's a Coppola. Yeah. So who knows? He's got one more film to go. So fingers crossed he gets a chance.
If he sticks to the plan. If he sticks to the plan.
If he sticks to the plan, which all indications are he will. I don't know. It's just really this. I'm sorry for people who are looking forward to this. You're probably going to like it. George liked it. The critics liked it. Most people liked it. I just thought it was dull. And in that sense, there were some laughs. This is not a terrible, terrible film. This is not, Death Machine bad. This is there were some laughs in here. I chuckled a few times, but mostly I was like, when apart from Nicolas Cage and Pedro Pascal's chemistry together, which is magnificent.
Yeah.
The rest of it was really quite dull, and particularly Tiffany Haddish's character didn't speak to me. I just don't even know why she was there.
Yeah. Fine. You have your opinion, sir. I will defend to the death your right to have it, but I do not agree.
Well, we don't disagree that often, but I'm disagreeing with you on this one.
Yeah. No, that's fine.
It's just maybe it's just as a Tuesday night and I just wasn't up for it. I don't know. Maybe you need to see it in a cinema. I don't know.
Yeah, it was just one of those movies that just got me perfectly at the right moment. But that's good to know. Now I am going to do a quick 2-minute blitz on Umbrella Academy season 3, if you do not mind.
By all means.
So it is, as I say, season 3 of the Umbrella Academy. It is based on a graphic novel series by Gerard Way. It has been something of a momentary, like when it's released, darling for Netflix for season 1 and season 2, and season 3 has just dropped. This is the Game of Thrones moment for the show, because like Game of Thrones, it has gone beyond the graphic novels at this point. So it is going off and doing its own thing. The difference is that it has created its own identity and not fucked itself over from the very beginning. They know what style of show they are going for. They are going for something that is not as gross as The Boys or anything like that, but absurd and funny, and they're kind of turning it into a family drama kind of thing. Just so happens that all of the characters have got weird fucking superpowers that should not have any real functionality in the real world, but they kind of work. And this is a dysfunctional family, and there's weight on everything that happens in this. One of the characters, she has been put through the ringer so much for every season. She seems to have, things have gotten worse for her. Another one, this is the big season for
Elliot Page.
Yeah, Ellen Page is now
Elliot
in every conceivable sense. Elliot Page, yes, in the credits, Elliot Page. They address it in the show, and they do it really well. It's kind of wonderful how all of the Elliot's family just kind of roll with it. And even when it's a situation of, like, there's a moment where one of the characters, he's been off doing stuff and he talks about it, and it just goes, Vanya's off doing the thing. And one of the characters says, oh no, it's Victor. What? Who's Victor? No, Vanya's Victor now. So I'm like, wow, I missed everything. There's no conversation about what or anything like that. It's just like, okay, that's what you want. I'm happy for you. Let's move on. And it would be lovely if society was just the same for everything. It's like, okay, you're on your journey. Doesn't affect me whatsoever. I'm going to not say anything horrible. I'm happy that you're happy.
I've always thought of this show as kind of Justice League for emos.
A little bit, but it's owning that absurdity on its sleeves. And within the first, I think, 10 minutes of episode 1 of season 3, we have a stupid dance routine, which seems bizarre and absurd, and it is, but it still also kind of fits because of just the absurdity of the show. The way that it finishes, it's a little bit lackluster, but it's still quite interesting. I hope that they get a season 4 because I just want to see where they kind of end. But I feel like this is a show that should be finishing either by the end of season 4 or maybe season 5. This is not one that should keep going. It is starting to show a little bit of its age on its storytelling, and the characters are starting to run their course. And I would rather see them go out in a blaze of glory than fade away and die and be disappointing like the end of Shining Girls.
Or Game of Thrones, as you referenced earlier.
Yeah, exactly, yes. But all the characters, all the actors, they know kind of how to play these parts. They know how to grow these parts. And it's still presented beautifully. The special effects look great. Everyone is firing on all cylinders in exactly the way that they want to do. This is a great Netflix equivalent of The Boys, in what I said before, of them knowing the genre that they want to play in, knowing the pace that they want to tell their story, and knowing every little element of this is the note that we want to hit for production value, for character arc, for emotional content, for action, and they just deliver that. So it is really great, really good if you like it. If you don't like it, you're not going to be able to get in at this point, because this is a continuing story. You cannot just jump in with season 3 or anything. You've got to be in from day 1 and go through. If you don't like episode 1 of season 1, you are not going to like the rest of the show, because they hit the ground running and they stick with that ideology. And they do well. So yeah,
I remember being very kind of middle of a road about I liked the first season. Okay, the second season was it's okay. So I mean, I'm gonna I feel like that puts me in a position where I should give this a miss, because if it's more of the same, then maybe. So if you're in the same boat as me, if you're kind of going, maybe put it on the back burner. But,
exactly. Yeah. All right. Well, that's all I wanted to say on Umbrella Academy, really. And
sorry to squeeze it down into the last 5 minutes, but that's what happens when we just get crapping on about things that don't matter.
That's what this show is.
All about, yes.
But thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen, for joining us. We really do appreciate it. If you want to follow us, go on to twitch.tv/thefriedbrain. Give us a subscribe and follow there. Really appreciate it. You can find us on all good podcast services. That should go up automatically on Sunday evenings. You can join us here 7:30 Wednesdays Australian time, at the Fried Brain on Twitter, at Evil Trav on Twitter for Trav, and follow us on YouTube and Facebook if you like. But next week we have got Wake in Fright, the new Chain movie, as chosen by Travis, and it'll be interesting to see where I go from there. And we will see what else we get up to in the meantime.
Did you get around to seeing Men?
No, I didn't get a fucking chance because I had Coke thrown in my face on the night that I was going to go and see it.
That'll do it.
Yeah, that kind of put me in a mood to not do anything except drive home and scream out of my window as I drove.
Yes, that'll do it.
But hopefully I will get a chance to see that this week, maybe tomorrow night if I have nothing else planned. But thank you so much, ladies and gentlemen. Good night.